Welcome to this special English edition of High Tea with Derrick and Rens, a podcast about cannabis. My name is Derrick Bergman.
And my name is Rens Hoppenbrouwers.
In this podcast, we talk about all things cannabis. Today, we'll do the show in English for the very first time.
Because we have a very, very special Canadian guest on the show, the wonderful Mara Miller, known the most as the Bag Lady. Welcome, Mara.
Hi, Rens. Hi, Derrick.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming all the way over to Eindhoven, right here at the VOC office where we tape the podcast every 2 weeks. So yeah, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. I used to work in Eindhoven. That was a long time ago, and it's much nicer to know that I don't have to do this 4 times this week. Eindhoven's awesome. I should have dressed a little bit warmer. From my end, it's awesome to be here supporting you guys because you are so supportive of me and of the whole cannabis industry and the sector. I should point out, yes, I am Canadian, but I have been living in Amsterdam for nearly 30 years.
Okay.
Long time, honey.
So we'll get into your Eindhoven job because I'm quite curious. But first we'll walk the listeners, also our new listeners who can now understand us because we are not speaking Dutch in this episode. Run them through the episode a bit. We have 4 segments that we do on every episode. The first one we call What's in Your Joint Today? The second one is Anything New, where we do the cannabis news sort of worldwide with a focus on our own country, of course. Then we have the segment From the Archive, in which I tell like a real old fart, old history, old cannabis culture.
I'm older than you are, mate.
Back in time, going back to the last century, not this one. So that's fun. On this episode, I'll go into one of my first jobs actually in the cannabis industry, which was a coffee shop tester for Highlife Magazine. So I went all across the country testing coffee shops, doing a bit of a Michelin routine.
That sounds like my fill my grinder kind of game, honey. That's just getting to smoke for free, yo.
Yep, it was. So we'll get to that in the From the Archive section. And then the final segment we do on every episode is the listener's response. And we give out nice prizes. We have a nice book. And maybe this time we have an extra surprise.
Maybe the bag lady brought a little special extra something. But you better make those questions good. Somebody better have come up with a good question.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Rens, it's your cue for our first segment, I'd say.
Yeah, this is High Tea with Derrick and Rens, episode 10. And as always, we will start with the very important question: what's in your joint today? So, Mara, what are you puffing on?
Well, I'm very glad that I pre-rolled this. I wanted to start the podcast a little bit sober. So en route, I might have had a cheeky little drag or two of an awesome vape pen by the Honeycomb and Connect Our Boys down in Spain, which was some kind of Paris OG stuff. It's great. It's clean. Okay. And then in the special joint that I rolled, well, that's a little bit of Tangimal, so I like those orange terps. And then I sprinkled on, in honor of the Homegrown Cup, one of the winners, Sky Sports Boys. They're also very good friends of mine. They gave me a little tub of dry sift from... What did they win with? Anyways, I sprinkled that into the
Was
Tangimal.
it Grape Ape?
Grape
That's it. That right. Thank you. Yep. Okay. I'm glad somebody
They stole your
I know that
lighter.
stuff.
They did, and look what I have. I got my lighter back. I got my special Remo lighter back. That was funny.
That was a big war.
I should warn you, once I start smoking, I get way stupid. So you may have to repeat things for me.
No problem. We have all the same problem. So, Derrick, what are you smoking on today?
Yeah, I think we'll be stinking up the place good today because I usually, as the listeners would know, smoke my own outdoor grown weed, my balcony.
Which is really nice,
weed.
by the way.
Yeah, it is, of course. But of course, I do also. I'm a guy who likes a bit of bag appeal and a bit of a different strain every now and then. So I did purchase some weed. It's called Pink Lemonade Haze,
Nice.
from the Pink Coffee Shop, which is very close to the VOC office.
I might have to smoke some of this after this.
You might.
I might have
because
to. I might have a little trade there. You know, a little Tangimal for a little pink lemonade haze.
It's my second joint of the day, I must admit, but the first one worked out well, and we've gotten this far on the podcast. So the smell is also, taste is, it's very good, I'd say. Not too bad. Rens,
Nice. Well,
what are you smoking today?
Well, to stay in the homegrown scene, I just rolled a joint with some hash from the Napoleon Haze from OJ Nye.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome guy, really
Very friendly
humble,
guy, yeah.
really
Sweet. You know, it's funny because he messaged me this morning. I think he won first place at the Homegrown Cup.
Yep,
So we got
could
some
be.
bags, and he was like, "How long do the bags last?" So I had a little chat with him this morning, and I got to smoke. What was it that? It was really nice.
Leonidas or something.
Nay,
he
it
made
wasn't the
some new
Phantom
crosses.
one. I can't remember what it was. No, it was somebody else.
That was.
I remember him putting out quite a lot
From
of.
somebody
That
else.
was from somebody
yeah.
else.
He had
yes.
out quite some glass jars.
There were
I
some
remember, and
great
they were
flavors,
all
man.
great.
The,
Really,
the Homegrown Cup just keeps getting better and better.
I was super
Thank
impressed
you.
by this guy.
Oh,
Yeah, but he made some excellent homemade hash from it. I think it's a little bit isolated because it's very strong.
Do I get to see it? Can I
Of
look?
course.
Can I touch?
Yes,
Epic.
try to make it. But as I really listen to our listeners, they advise me not to smoke too much.
It was just the one. It was just this one guy.
Tea.
Yeah, but it's
The whole point. Oh, this
it
smells
does
really good. Hold
a little
on.
bit reflect on my voice.
No, but you know what? Listen, it's not about reflecting on your voice. It's because you wind up making a little bit less sense. And if people are not as high as you are when you're making the podcast as they are when they're listening to the
I
podcast.
do something wrong.
See?
Yeah, that's
So,
that's,
you know, we
that's-
start this by lighten up. So everybody who's going to be listening to this is going to have a little patience. And we recommend that you light them up.
Even that one guy, one of our listeners that always listens to the podcast while working out and running about. Maybe you can also just start before doing his sports routine by just having a little spliffy
You know
and
what?
get on the right wavelength.
There's different ideas about getting high before exercising. I know some really fit people who do that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know when I was training, not a good idea for
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm very klutzy. I would drop a dumbbell on my foot or something, and I got enough foot issues at the moment. We stay sober when we train. When we podcast, we get baked. Actually, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Honk.
maybe have some speed in it. Go to the news section because afterwards we'll get into the real interview part where we
This
where we-
is flow yo
where we plan to go really in depth with the back lady, and I can't wait to get to that part of the show. So I suggest Rens, let's just do the news
Move it
section.
along.
Anything new?
Yes, it is. Yes, let's start off with Johan van Laarhoven, all known in Holland as the old owner of the Grass Company.
Yep, you're in the
for,
south.
Beautiful coffee shops in the south of Holland, and 2 in the Bosch and 2 in Tilburg. Almost 6 years ago, the government was really busy with,
Trying to nail this guy.
It was
Prosecutor.
only just him. It was
they-
everybody. The thing is, hold on. I'm going to say something here, right? You don't go to prison anywhere for 5 years or 6 years or whatever for no reason, niet for niks. You understand? That it was unfair? I'm sure it was unfair. Was he an angel? Probably bloody not. Do you know what I mean? Like, did he
Well,
start
we-
something good? I don't know.
He had a
The
clean
news is-
slate in the Netherlands, and they investigated him for a long time.
He
They
knows-
couldn't nail him on anything.
Yeah.
He played by the rules.
He never got
What they are
prosecuted.
saying and what they've said all along is that he is like a fraud with the tax, that he doesn't give up everything that he sells. Yeah, like no other bar in Holland just selling alcohol does that. But even if that is true, you're not put in jail if you're a tax fraud.
So okay,
The
but
thing
briefly,
is-
how did he get locked up there? Because
Well,
I know
yeah, we're
half
gonna
the
explain
story.
a little bit.
All right.
It's an unbelievable story
The
what
thing
happened
is,
to
they
him.
couldn't catch him.
Hmm.
There was no good evidence
Yep.
against him.
Yep.
So
And he had already moved, of course,
Yeah,
to
he's-
Thailand because
yeah.
he retired. He
He
sold the
sold
4
his-
coffee shops.
And
But he was young, wasn't he?
Nah,
nah, he's
he's now
already-
59.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so when
Relatively.
he was 50, I would like to be retired now myself, honey.
But the thing is, like an officer of the judge of the ministry couldn't really sleep at night of it that he couldn't
But he
prosecute
couldn't
him.
nail him, yeah.
Very
So-
obsessed.
And Johan van Laarhoven moved in 2011 to Thailand
Yep.
with his wife, and after he sold his coffee shop, and he really wanted to make up a big good life over there. But the thing is, they really send a message to the Thai government, like, "Hey, watch this guy. He's
We are investigating him for large-scale
and,
drug
watch
dealing.
Watch this drug criminal.
Yeah.
Okay.
he's building houses
Yep.
with drugs money
Yep.
and laundry and all those
No
things."
mention of coffee shops. No mention that he had a license.
They made the story suit what they wanted to do, but how did the...
But it gets worse because what happens? Not much happens after the first letter. So the guy gets frustrated even more. Then he says his wife Tukta, which before they said it was only like a witness, now she's also prosecuted here. Go start an investigation. They literally said it. Go start a criminal investigation
against this
into
Thai
the couple.
lady
Yeah.
and the couple, okay.
She had nothing to do with anything. She's still in jail, which is this was of course fantastic news because a lot of people worked very hard.
Yeah, we didn't explain the story
Yeah,
yet
to get-
already, but he's finally back in Holland.
Yeah, so the Thai government basically said, or the Thai judge said, oh, this guy, he had all the drug dealing, so he gets 104 years in jail. And the jail in Thailand, you're sitting in 30 square meters with 30 people.
I've heard
It's just
terrible
terrible.
stories. Sure.
Yeah, and there's no bed, there's no nothing, there's no toilets,
it's
there's
a-
a bucket. It's just
It's
crazy
a bad
situation.
jail, you know?
Very
Like
medieval.
Holland, the
Co-
jails here are
cockroaches.
nice. You
Yeah.
wanna go to jail here? I mean, I've seen.
But no coffee shop owner ever goes to jail in the Netherlands because even the judges here, if you have like too large inventory, which is not by the rules,
They
they
take
will
your
still
money.
Yeah, but they
They
still
can't-
not put
they-
you
yeah.
in jail.
No, of course not.
So
they
this
hit
was
you in the, they hit you in
this
the,
was
in
just
the
really
wallet.
one big tragedy, but it took years, and we have to mention her. I think there was only one member of parliament who really stood up for Johan van Laarhoven and his wife, which was Vera Bergkamp,
Yep.
also quite well known because she made the wheat law proposal, etc., etc. She was the one that kept asking questions to the minister, keeping on the case, giving interviews about it. And then finally, it was last year that our national ombudsman, he did an official investigation into the case. And he really concluded that things had gone badly wrong. That the Dutch government really made a lot of mistakes and totally lost perspective of what would happen to the couple.
That they were able
Because there was also a military government who just came into power months before the letters.
Thailand has got a history of complicated political stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the last 10 years. It's been complicated. The thing that's amazing is that somehow, he's back in Holland and that his wife is still locked up.
But because she's no Dutch citizen, she's Thai. That's the whole problem there.
Was she not married? Were they married here in Holland?
No. It's very that's
No,
what's
but
still.
this is the kind of stuff that happens all the time. I mean, really.
But for this guy, what was
yeah.
super special about the case, I think it never ever happened in Dutch history, is that our Minister of Justice, he traveled to Thailand, talked to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice there, so the highest level.
That's what I mean. Something big had to happen to get.
Yeah.
You get convicted for drugs in Thailand, you can just wave
That's
your
it.
life goodbye.
Yeah, but
sure.
people were really afraid, and I
fucked.
think with reason, that he would die in jail because he had all kinds of diseases. There was no medical help when he was in the Thai jail. So yeah, obviously it's very good news that he's now back in Holland, but he is still in jail here, actually in the maximum security prison in Vught. And
He's locked up here.
Yeah, he's still locked up.
Still not free.
But I think it's really the Dutch government will not want to make the mistake of immediately releasing him, having pictures in the newspapers here of Johan van Laarhoven triumphantly returning home. They want to have as little publicity over that, I think, as they can, and release him maybe in a few months. And I think if they play by all the rules, then it's 16 more months for him in a Dutch jail. But hopefully they'll give him some kind
Instead
of...
of 80 years
Hey,
in a
listen,
Thai
that's
prison.
Of course.
obviously,
So
you
that's-
know, like, look,
Yep.
he's out of Thailand, one. You know,
So
Thailand's
that's
nice.
positive news, and we will get
Good
back
news.
to it. The next thing, the Liberal Party D66, and we mentioned the head of it, of the, like, how you say that, the
Yeah, she does the drug policy for the
drug
party, Vera
from
Bergkamp.
the D66. They published a drug manifesto calling for regulation for all illegal drugs. And yeah, Derrick,
Yeah,
you know more about this?
in a way, it's interesting. There were rumors about this going on before it was published. So D66 is always the party. It was working for regulation of cannabis, but now they went a lot further, saying we can really say that the whole drug war and our whole approach in Holland for hard drugs, so ecstasy, cocaine, all these like list one hard drugs, it has completely failed because there's plenty of it around. People are using it all around. And we are wasting all these resources, and things only get worse.
I think Portugal is a country that's got some very progressive ideas towards all drug use. Because when you use any drugs recreationally, I have a rule. You can always just have one of everything. As long as you don't have more than that, you're okay. But a lot of people tend to overindulge. And I think and somebody who's going to overindulge or become an addict is going to do that in one aspect of their life, whether it's drugs or gambling or whatever. An addict is an addict is an
Porn,
addict. That's
climbing
it. Well,
mountains.
I was going to avoid the porn one, but since you opened that little can of worms, honey, dirty little Derrick. You know, I don't think it's wrong if somebody wants to go out to a party and use a little bit of MDMA or ecstasy. That's not a big deal. I do think it's a problem when 14-year-old kids are on the street corners, you know, slinging for that I don't like. It would be nice to have some progressive rules because, let's face it, where would you rather be? In a room full of drunken football hooligans or in a room full of people dancing, having a smoke, and maybe tripping a little bit? Tell you where I want to be. Tell you what's legal. Tell you what's not legal.
Yeah, that's true.
It's simple.
Yep.
It's, you know, like really, it's simple. It's simple behavior. You have way more problems with what's legal than with what's not legal.
Totally, yeah. What's interesting, though, is it seems like they had the same problem that we as VOC have been having since the very start. How hard it is to get people you can say are VIPs, well-known Dutch people, whether they are artists or whatever,
No one's gonna
to sign this manifesto.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, interestingly, there's a lot of addiction experts on there who say this is the best way, regulate everything. But the real VIP type people, maybe 5 are on there. It's super hard for people, even in the Netherlands, with all our progressive image that we have abroad.
So
They don't come out of the closet.
no, but I was going to say nowadays, I think in terms of cannabis anyways, there's a lot more celebrities and stars coming out and promoting different types of cannabis businesses.
Outside the Netherlands.
I said that. That's what
Yeah.
I said. Hey, listen. Look, Holland's going backwards. You really
It's
want
so
me to
frustrating.
you want me? Of course, it's frustrating for you because you've been fighting City Hall forever, and where has it gotten you? Well, from what I can see, right, a whole lot of interesting people and books and information, but stuff doesn't change. You know, like in the UK, there's a massive cannabis scene, and I will mention it because I'm kind of a part of it. It's massive. Really, it's all underground. I don't even think the government has half a clue how big all
There
of
is
this
actually one police officer who does know, and he totally approves of it. Eh?
Of course,
it's a
it does,
very famous
but
case.
the thing is, there's
Excellent.
the point is, the UK is going to look at Canada for legalization.
Of course.
I was back in Canada for the first time 3 years ago, and I saw what legalized cannabis looked like. I never thought I'd see that in my life. Really. My sister flipped out because we went into one of the shops, and she's like, "Oh my God, it looks like an Apple store." And I'm like, "What do you think, honey? This is legal drug dealing. There is lots of money to be made
Oh,
here."
yeah.
But they're not even touching 20% of the actual market. What hit me really strongly was the age of the people in these retail outlets. They're our age. The kids
Okay.
were not in there.
No.
The kids, when you
They
go
can
to
get it
school,
cheaper.
they can get it cheaper and better. And there probably were some underground shops open that I didn't go visit, but just seeing the mainstream of it, I was like, fair enough. You know, if I'm a typical middle-aged whatever that has some kind of pain or just wants to smoke a joint, doesn't want to drink, I can go in, do it, and there's no stigma attached to it. I was even allowed to smoke a joint at my sister's house. I nearly fell over. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk now. And her husband's like, where you going? I said, smoke. Joint. He's like, what? Smoke it here. I said, what now? I said, what are you, nuts? What do you mean smoke it here? He's like, what? It's legal now.
It's legal.
And these are the straightest rule follower people on the planet. Like, I would figure you just wouldn't want anybody knowing that somebody is using drugs on your property. But it's
But that was in
allowed.
the past.
This is a thing.
Yeah.
It's legal,
So
so it's
But we
It's
and
not-
having
it's
lived
cool
in
to do.
Holland for so long, it's gone backwards here. You haven't been doing your job, mate. It's gone backwards.
We need help.
Wow.
We need
Yeah.
help, back lady.
Well, the thing is, look at all the money that all these countries are making now. England is going to copy Canada. Canada is flawed. Okay, it's super flawed, but they at least started with something. America, super flawed. England's going to copy Canada. Portugal is probably the smarter way.
Spain's
No.
going.
Spain is complicated. Madrid shut down Spanibus, fined them thousands of whatever. But in Barcelona, Spanibus is big and lots of fun.
Of course.
You know, the capital doesn't want anything to do with cannabis. They allow that million.
But it's all step by step, also there. And with Portugal, I have to say, I'm very enthusiastic about their policy that changed since 2001. But one of the big flaws that they have is reminds me a lot of the Netherlands. Yes, they decriminalized all personal possession and use of anything, of heroin, of mushrooms, whatever. But where are you going to get it? Is there a shop? No, there's not. It's all still total underground dealing. And what I've heard from Portuguese activists is that actually now they have developed a sort of a tolerance policy like Holland for like smaller dealers of anything. So that the police sort of know if you are a
selling
small
what to
time
who. Yeah,
seller,
okay.
then we won't even talk to you. It's okay. But they're still going after the big ones and the supply thing. And all that's negative about prohibition from that point of view, from who's producing it, who's wholesaling it, the corruption bit, that's all still going on in Portugal. So really, Europe needs to step it up. I don't know which country will be the first. It might be Germany. It could be,
Switzerland
yeah, or
doesn't
even
count as Europe, does
No.
it?
Switzerland could also
Luxembourg.
be the one.
Luxembourg is the one that's.
Yeah, but they're already finding out. They put it nice in their government program that they will totally legalize cannabis, the whole thing. And now they find out it's quite complicated.
It's a
How
whole-
are you going to do it?
It is really complicated, and that's why when you take a look at, everybody's screaming in the UK, we want legalization, and I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah, if
don't.
it's like Canada.
No, because and it's still not a bad thing. It's still a good thing. I like the idea that somebody who wants to, that wants to medicate or use cannabis recreationally has the option without being vilified or chased for it.
That's the good part,
And
of course.
That is a good part. And the one thing that you can say about Holland, unlike anywhere else in the world, it's the only place on the planet that anybody over 18 years of age can walk into a retail shop on a street, buy a joint, get a nice cup of hot chocomel with whipped cream, and sit down, skin up, light up, with a big smile on their face. And here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to bring this over to one of these next points we're talking about, because this just leads right into it. Because,
Fantastic.
isn't that good?
Wow,
Wasn't that
you're
good?
Fantastic.
I'm a pro.
You're on the
Yo,
roll,
yo,
baby.
yo, yo. And this is okay. I don't really follow the news in general. The news is always bad. It is. I don't. I'm terrible. I'd rather watch what's going. Never mind what I want to watch. Anyways, but now
Tell them what's the new the news
I was
article?
gonna say I'm winding up to it, guys. Y'all. So starting January 1st.
Hurry up, Mara.
All right. I'm sorry. You can smoke and vape pure cannabis in Holland in coffee shops. That is not going to be eliminated from the new super smoking tobacco law that is coming in, right?
Very true.
How about that?
What's an interesting detail about this news story that really broke last week is it with the guy in government that's responsible for the whole anti-smoking war and the prevention of all kinds of things that are bad for you. He's quite a zealot, you could call him a Christian. But he answered questions from PVV, which is our extreme right anti-Muslim party, and they asked at him, does this new change of the law, when you're tightening the policy, does that also go for smoking pure cannabis and also the water pipe tobacco? That's in Holland a famous
Shishas,
thing.
sure.
Shishas,
Shisha
the
Shisha
shisha lounges.
Sure. That's part of the culture. The Moroccans, the Turks, that's really.
So he gave the answer, and it was super clear. And also he mentioned all the things that will be banned with this new law that will be enforced from April 1st this year. It includes water pipe tobacco. It will be gone. You're not longer allowed to have any water pipe. Shisha lounges will be a thing of the past.
Well, they're going to be a thing of the underground now. They're not going to be a thing of the past.
Not like it is today. But the good thing, of course, is that he put it in black and white. To smoke or vape pure cannabis it is not involved in this law. It can still be done in the coffee shops. It's there.
I have a question. This is a coffee shop question because I've been to a lot of coffee shops, and especially in Amsterdam, and there are a lot of tourists, and it's very difficult to police what the
Of course.
tourists are doing and what they're putting in into a joint. I mean, you can tell them, hey, take your tobacco pouch or cigarettes off the table.
They
Some
do
of
so.
these
Eh?
they do, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of coffee shops that have pots of this horrible stuff.
Tobacco
It's true.
substitute. Yeah.
You wouldn't touch it.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't want it. Well, but it's on. It's on there.
It's the tobacco
I'm
alternative.
wondering how. Okay, I smoke pure. I stopped with tobacco in 2013, so nearly 7 years ago, and I'll never go back. On a short list of good things that I did in my life, was stop smoking tobacco. Sorry, that was a little dig at you because
it's good.
you know what
It's
he's doing. And you know what? One of the things that I do get a lot is when it comes to the taste of cannabis, if it's mixed with tobacco, how are you actually? This is a whole war. This is an
Yeah.
Instagram war. But how are you actually really tasting something if it's mixed with something else?
You just are used to do it. That's the thing. You just used to grow
Yeah.
up with smoking cannabis mixed with tobacco.
Hey,
so
I
That's
grew
how
up-
you always taste
Oh,
it.
I grew up in Canada. We mixed everything with tobacco. That was it. And we were smoking hash. And honestly, that
Yeah,
is the
that's
one
the
thing
thing.
that I do miss.
I smoke a lot of hash.
I know. And I miss good. We talked
But
about
this is
that.
very interesting because I always understood out of the U.S. cannabis scene that they really hardly ever
Never.
had any hash.
No.
So how did you get it?
Well, we were
Via the French connection.
Canada.
French.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't really know. I think the first stuff that I ever smoked, that I started smoking, and that was 36 years ago. Were you even born yet? Oh, I know you were.
I was.
I
I
know
was.
you were. I know you weren't. I'm talking to the listeners. So we would get this really shitty slate Moroccan hash. It was the same
Soap
stuff
bars.
Soap bars.
Yeah.
There's the same stuff that we got 20 years that I got 20 years later when I was when I in the 90s in the UK when I first went there. But in Canada we didn't have like a big weed scene, not on the East Coast. That's different. So I grew up in Montreal. So I think out in Vancouver there was always a bigger weed scene, and the weed scene would have developed
Bud.
more. BC Bud, listen. But on the East Coast, the French Canadian shit, no, we got nothing.
Hashish.
We got hash. So you know what? That's really,
That's not
I
bad.
never really even thought about it. No, everybody had a set of dabbing. Let me talk to you about dabbing in the 80s. It was a set of knives that were burnt on the end, and we didn't have gas.
I remember.
I bet you do. We didn't have gas stoves at home. We'd have these electric things with the coil, so you would like prop the knives up, and you know you'd be and it was shitty. You got high, but that was the only way to get high because just a little bit in a joint, you weren't really getting high.
And you shared it with a lot
We
of people
did a
always.
lot. Yeah, it was always sharing. Here
Yeah.
we're all sitting. What a luxe leven,
No,
guys.
no, we did
We're all
like
sitting
we did
here.
like hash in the glass.
Well, yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
gas
it's
hash,
like,
hot
put a-
knife. I know
yeah.
exactly what you did with the
So,
pin thing.
yeah.
Sure. Oh, we did. We've done some. But anyways, back to the tobacco thing. You know what?
It's a savior if I can say it like this, because if they would ban off all the smoking material from also included the coffee shops, it would really end the
they
really,
had no choice.
how you say that the scene
The
and
social aspect,
yeah.
really, of the coffee shops.
They don't
Uh,
care, but the thing is, they don't care about the. Hold on a minute. The government doesn't care about the social aspect. We care about the social aspect. The government cares about having a few hundred or a few thousand people pounding on their door that they've lost their businesses. All their employees have lost their businesses.
I don't even
and all
think
the
they care
tax
about that.
money. You don't think so?
What I think, and I'm pretty sure about this, because with VOC, we had a few interesting talks over the last weeks, including one with like the big organization for all the cities, all the
They
municipalities.
must be
there.
so tired of you.
No. Actually, we are now only getting through to like the high level of these organizations that actually contact us because we do send out these brochures and we try all the time. And now that we're 10 years into it, finally they sort of take us seriously.
They recognize us.
But so I could ask them, do you as an organization, because they are in The Hague, so they lobby all the time with the national government,
Have
because
to.
they're fighting for the local politicians. So I said, is it on your radar that if come April 1st, it's no longer allowed to smoke anything in the coffee shops, not even pure, that you will have about 1 million consumers, they'll be outside. They'll be in the parks. They'll be on benches. They'll be everywhere but in the coffee shop. And he said, yeah, you can be sure it's on our radar. And he almost back then already said, this will be taken care of. There will be any kind of an exclusion for that because they understand. So not so much the social function as
the social life,
the bullshit that will happen if you do take it outside.
And
And it's also a
experienced
reason.
myself when I was in Canada and US.
Can't smoke anywhere.
Yeah, I couldn't smoke anywhere, and it was insane cold, and I was standing outside of the car.
With all this good weed.
Yeah, with all this good weed, and I had to
Rens,
bibber and smoke
cold.
it. Yeah.
Dude, it was minus fucking 40 when I was growing up, and we were doing bottle tokes behind the Max Milk at like 9 in the evening in the freezing. You know, we could all roll joints in the blowing wind and stuff like that. Come on. But you saw it. You can't smoke anywhere. I was in a park.
So that was really missing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even mind to stand outside, but you're really making a little bit of problems over there.
That's not
I don't
needed.
think it's
Nuisance.
fair.
Overlast.
I was going to say, but I don't think it's fair. Exactly.
The smell of it.
I will smoke on the street, but if there's like a family with a couple of kids or some old people, I'm not going to blow a whole bunch of smoke into anybody's face. That's not correct. It's not right.
I will move a few meters, but I will still
I will
smoke.
put mine out.
Okay.
Because mine stink more than yours. Yours are full of tobacco.
But
And they recognize the smell.
overall,
It's familiar
overall,
to them.
it's a good thing for the coffee shops. It's at least
Totally.
a little thing they can really rely on.
Yep.
And it has to be like a little change for the smokers. They have to just smoke pure, but it's better than with tobacco. So good thing.
We'll
all
see what
good thing.
happens in Amsterdam. Can I ask you a favor? I gotta
Always.
ask you a favor. This next point on the list has to do with CBD. Can I respectfully request that we don't discuss anything to do with CBD on this episode? Could we please do that? Pretty please?
Well, it's pretty important for the VOC.
It's super important for the VOC,
But
and you will have lots of other afleverings to do that in.
It's
But
good.
can I respectfully
We were
request-
already thinking of inviting August Delors himself, the legend, to the show. He's the guy behind this. It's such a respectful
Is
request
it? Could I do that?
that
course.
I'd say we could grant it because we have so much else to talk about.
I was going to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
it opens and the reason, aside from everything else, is it opens up such a giant floodgate of stuff that we have more fun stuff to talk about today. How about that?
okay, I'll note
Can you make a note?
for next
Bag lady
episode.
bitch.
We'll move it to the next episode. We'll go on to funny news.
Oh look! Oh yeah, no. Okay, I'm
The
gonna
High
stick this-
Times.
This is, listen, let me
You
say
do-
something
you-
about
you
High
tell our-
Times.
you
I'm gonna
tell
do
the
this
listeners.
in the American accent. High Times is getting into cannabis retail and has bought dispensaries in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, where they plan to sell the winners of the company's famous cannabis cup. Really, it's about time, guys, because everything else you're doing is kind of not working out for you. Good on you for being publishing for this many years. Good on you for putting on this many events and whatever. But honestly, for the pioneers in this industry, of course you were going to do this. What took you so long, guys? That's my
Really?
point. Hey, I've been to Vegas. a
Let's
whole
just
bunch of
go
times.
sell weed.
Let's just go. I mean, what were you waiting for, really? What were you waiting for? That's
Yeah,
where all the money is.
I just told, like Derrick, me and Mauro from the Homegrown Cup were already talking about these things. You know, that's the first thing what comes on your mind if you're having a cup and you have
Sell
all
the
those
winners.
Yeah, make a collection of them.
You
and
want a
people
seed
want
company. The thing is,
cup
one
winners,
of
you
the
know?
really interesting things about exactly this in coffee shops, right? If seed companies are smart, you want to make sure your weed is in the coffee shops for people to come in, so they go, "Oh, damn, this is epic weed. Where can I buy the seeds for this?" And
Yeah.
then you're just holding the seeds up in front of them.
Here they
going,
are.
Well, right here.
Get
you know?
growing.
Done.
Get
Get
it-
growing.
get it
Grow
connected.
your own.
If
you
only
know?
we could make up the rules. Eh?
Listen, if we're pretty adept at breaking them. It's all about not getting caught, not being greedy, not getting caught. Simple, you know. Anyways, look, Rens and I had the opportunity to get high together in Las Vegas, as a matter of fact, at the MJ BizCon, while I was recording another podcast with my good buddy. He was cool, right? Come on,
yeah,
you can't
yeah,
tell me
for
that.
sure.
Who?
The Jay from the Uptown Grow Lab. You need
Okay.
to meet him.
Okay.
He's an O'er G than us. He's an O'er OOG. But he's great fun, and we were outside and we were smoking. But it's unbelievable what goes on in Vegas, really. Like you walk into these dispensaries, and okay, I said the ones in Canada were nice. Did you go to Planet 13?
I was
It's
just
24
wanted
I
hours.
to
know
ask
what you were gonna
Yeah.
say, and that's why I was leading it in
I-
because I didn't. I go to a smaller one that doesn't have such big lineups, but right?
Yeah, I visited the two biggest ones, the
Madman.
Reef and Planet 13, and they were like next to each other, and almost in the same street. So that was really easy to find. But like the Reef of Planet 13 was like a shopping mall. It was insane. If you just walk inside, it's like we have the Heuvel in Eindhoven. It's a little shopping mall. It's like exactly like this. It's huge with like 2 or 3 restaurants in it.
I was
With
gonna say, wait till you see what they're doing with that now. They had to do that so that when the licensing comes in, where if you have a dispensary and you want people to be able to consume on site, because Vegas is so the new Amsterdam, you have to have it tacked on to where your license already exists. So I think they got themselves a property that they could just expand on. So they could be like the Disney World of...
yeah, yeah.
For sure.
It was like the biggest dispensary I ever been in, for sure.
I'm afraid of going. I don't want to go there.
I wouldn't go there next time. I have to be
Okay.
honestly. And also Reef, I was really expecting a lot of it because I was following Reef from the beginning on social media, but yeah, the weed was so bad. I was almost thinking to walk back in the store because I had finally the ticket.
Can I say hi,
Yeah, of
Mauro?
course.
Look who just walked in the room. Homegrown cup number 2, man, boss.
Oh, number 1.
Well,
He's the number one.
But it's the second one here.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the second one here. So what I was going to say about the dispensaries in Vegas, there was one very close to where I was staying. Somebody had also recommended it to me. It's called the Essence, I think. Here's what I do in the dispensaries. I go in and I buy the pre-rolled joints. It's as simple as that. I don't need to go in and buy 3.5 grams of this, that, and the other thing. People are like, oh, you don't know what you're getting in the joints. I'm like, well, kind of, because I've bought the flour and I've bought the joints. And quality-wise, I've done this in California, I've done this in Canada, I've done it in Vegas. Quality-wise, I'd rather smoke the joints.
Really?
Yeah, really, because I'm not going to buy the super expensive weed. I'm not.
But I'd
There's
say here
always
in the
gonna be
Netherlands,
people-
it's always the other way around.
Well,
Yeah, well, it's
I
also
didn't
with
say the
tobacco.
Netherlands.
Yeah.
No. In Holland, it's a different story. But out there,
Okay.
I experimented. I tried I tried a whole bunch of different ones. And when you're there for a convention, they give you an expo discount. So I was probably paying about €10 a joint, which is, put a gram in a
big
joint.
gram joints.
Yeah, you know how I smoke.
Yeah.
I smoke a big gram joint.
But I bought like one pre-rolled in Canada, and that was my worst experience ever because like the quality, it was very clean. The ash was incredibly white, but the thing is, it was produced like 4 or 5 months ago, so it was like strawberry cough, and normally those
no
typical
flavor. Nothing.
flavor
No.
at all. I was like, okay.
For me, there's only one pre-roll that I would like to smoke, actually. Because since I heard that Ungayo Bielem, my friend from California, the comedian guy, he put out his own his own pre-roll line. Yeah, that's one I would like to smoke.
Well,
but the rest...
I'll get you one of those, honey. We'll get you one. You tell me what you want. I will make sure that we have somebody.
Just this
to
one.
do
The rest
that.
I'll roll myself.
All right. Well, you have to write it down. But you know what? Look, Rens, that's one of the things about I'd say about the Canadian because I bought a bunch of joints and I bought a bunch of weed, and it was all very clean, and it was all very smokable, but it had no taste. It wasn't until I got to Toronto and met my good stoner bro buddy Remo. He was literally the first person I saw when I got to the Lift Expo, and I was like, oh, thank you, Remo. Please. He's like, hey, stoner sis, you want me to fill your grinder? I got some zombie kush here. And then I was happy. What are you looking for?
tell us a little bit more about the Fill My Grinder Cup.
Oh, yeah.
How did it start? I think it started our cup, the first one.
It kind of
didn't it?
started a little bit before that, okay? Because here's the thing, right? I'm super blessed. Super blessed. People give me stuff all the time. Great. Thank you. Blessed. Lovely. And at some point, it started becoming a joke between me and a few other people where every time I'd see them, I'd be like, come on, just gonna put something in my grinder. And then it became kind of a hashtag, like, come on, fill my grinder, right? And people are like, well, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's a game. Do you want to know how it works? But like, here's how it works. You fill my grinder, I grind, I roll, I smoke, and I win every motherfucking time, honey. Okay, to understand that this is done with growers, breeders, trappers, people who have
It works when you tried it with me.
But what are you? Do you grow weed?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So, and it did. And I'm never greedy. I only want one grinder fill. And then, okay, so then I thought, oh, dude, everybody's got a cup. I'm going to have my own cup. We're going to fill my grinder cup. How does it work? Well, I tap you on the shoulder and go, what you got there, honey? Want to fill my grinder? And then here's the thing. I would do it all the time. But I get so fucking high after the third joint, I forget to keep track of who. I have an Instagram page. There's 500 followers on it just because that's something that I would actually like to work more on because I think, look.
But I remember last time at the Homegrown Cup, you had a all neat
I
administration where you
super
was
organized.
writing down the
I
strain
did. And
names.
Getting
I'm able
professional.
to do it. I had to
Oh, yeah.
because it was a Homegrown Cup. Like I had to be at least as professional as what these guys were doing. But at Spanibus, that's not possible.
no.
People are literally throwing weed at
Too
me.
much chaos.
Like it is. It's chaos and oof.
3 days of chaos.
But the thing that I like about it is, look, first of all, it means that I'm a big fan of supporting growers and breeders. So this grown here, not flown here. I don't care if you've got the best Cali weed on the planet in your bag. If I've got a grower or a breeder sat beside me with something they've done, I don't care if they're a beginning grower, if they're experienced or whatever. The best weed I ever smoke is when I've got the guy that had the hand in producing it. Period. That's all. And I'm going to give respect to a beginning grower. Why not? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Oh, is that your first crop? It's like, well, honey, you've got a little bit of experience to gain, but it's different when somebody like Karma or Lady Sativa, I expect that shit to be fucking perfect top shelf. Everything. And it always is, right?
It reminds me of what Doug Fine always does before he lights up anything. He always thanks the grower before lighting up. Doug Fine. He's an American author. He wrote a few books. One really nice about cannabis. It's called Too High to Fail.
Okay.
And we had him over at Cannabis Liberation Day 1 year, I think the last one. And he's a friend of mine, real funny guy.
Humble
He's
guy.
like he's a farmer, but also he's a journalist turned farmer. And then hemp farmer. And he smokes weed, but he doesn't grow the weed to smoke. He grows the hemp variety. But it's great. He has a solar-powered farm, and he has the goats there, and fantastic guy.
The producers that grow with love, the producers, the cultivators, the people that grow with love. They're growing for the love of the plant, for the love of
That's what you want.
That's different. I mean, and the other thing is, look, there's another thing that's going on in Canada. I'm going back to the Canada thing. So one of the best Canadian growers, breeders, whatever, also a good friend, is Matt, the great gardener. Matt has got, I'm all into orange terpy stuff, guys. If it tastes orange, I'm your girl. And he's got a strain called Orange Barb. But they've got their own LP now, so a license. They're their own licensed producer now. I believe this is how this is working, and their goal is we're gonna bring the type of weed that we like to smoke, the underground weed, up into the mainstream, so that it's not only what these dispensaries have, this dry, old whatever that doesn't conserve its flavor. You know what I mean? So like mad respect for everybody who's growing and breeding, and mad disrespect for all your dirty little trappers out there that just get a bag of Amnesia or Star Dog and put a new fancy name on it and call it something that
Rens.
ever piss me off.
Yeah. Oh well.
Are we taking a deep breath and having a pause here? Is that like...
What do you
No,
have
no, we
for-
go straight into
All
the
right,
next
what do we have? The old
segment.
box. Ik ben ook een oude doos.
We go right to the archive section, I'd say.
Oh, you have maybe a good question for Mara.
For archives. I mean,
Yeah,
why
what
don't
I,
write
what
back?
I was wondering about, of course, we didn't ask the obvious question, how did you end up working in the cannabis industry? But I'd like to take it even a bit further back than that. What kind of a child were you? And also, what kind of a child, how would you describe your childhood?
Here's the thing.
In
If my
Montreal.
parents, I was going to say, if my parents thought I was a handful at 5 and at 15, they should catch me at 50. I'm glad they're not around to see this. Here's the thing, right? I wouldn't. Ooh, sorry,
No problem,
bang!
no
No,
problem.
I'm hitting things. I'm
No
sorry. I'm
problem, no
talking about my
problem.
childhood. I want to hit myself a little bit. You are a bad person. So I didn't sleep. My mother couldn't get me to sleep. Like at 7 months old, she would take me out in -30 weather in the stroller because I just wouldn't sleep. I'd be up. When I was a teenager, oh, those were fun times. We'd have internet back then. If I'm up in the middle of the night and I felt like talking, I would call in radio shows. I did. I would call up and I would talk to the DJs, I swear. So the talking, at 9 months old, I was already speaking full sentences. Always. You know, super high energy, but I never really found like a focus or a direction in life, which is both a good and a bad thing, and also a product of our generation, the lost generation, the Generation X.
Yeah.
It is. You know, I meet too many people around my age that are fucked up, for lack of a better way of putting it. Or, you know, like I take a look at a lot of the people that I'm hanging out with now, and I'm hanging out with a lot of people that are 20 years younger than me. I'm having the best time as well. And sometimes I'm like, man, why do they want to hang out with me? And then I'm like, the entirety of the UK cannabis scene can't just be being polite. They pick me up at airports. They invite me to all these things. Like, we have a really, really good time. So when I was 15, I'm trying to think, how old were you? Here's a good question. We'll segue into this. How old were you guys when you smoked your first joint?
It's always a good subject.
Yeah.
That's a very good subject.
Yep.
Shall we start with the youngest guy?
Obviously.
Well, my first, I got raised up in the skateboard industry, in skateboard scene.
Yep.
So when I was 12, 13, I already had a lot of friends that were 30, and they were already smoking. But they always told me like, Rens, you can smoke when you're 18, but not now. But I was respecting that. So my first joint was like with my schoolmates, and that was like, and I could already roll a joint because I saw it my whole, like for 7 years already, but I never smoked a joint. So, and at the age of 17, 18, and I really thought like, okay, my friends around me are smoking now, I can really try it also. And from the start, I really got hooked.
That's old though. 17, 18
Yeah.
is old, especially in Holland for experimenting with drugs. You know,
Absolutely.
that seems old.
And
to
then it
me.
was new to me. I really got explained very well, and I knew like, okay, this is cannabis. It's very nice, but hey, don't use it already. Just start at 17, 18 when you're a little bit older.
It's
and
interesting because what's your age exactly?
now I'm 30.
Yeah, so when
man.
I am 48. So when I was 16, I was allowed into the coffee shop because the age was 16 back then. When Rens was 16, it already they raised the age to 18, which
Yep.
I think is interesting. And I think also statistically, it's like a trend that people in the Netherlands, they are starting older. When I had my first joint, I think I was just 16, maybe 15, around that time. And what's interesting, we had this conversation before, that pretty much everybody, your very first time you smoke any weed or hash, you really have no effect. And it's a big letdown because you hear all these stories and then you finally do it and there's nothing. But you have to do it the second time, you know? Your body really has to adapt to it and knows what being stoned and high is about, basically. And then the second time you get really high. So for me, I don't think I even remember I remember the first time I got stoned.
Yeah,
But
me
not
too.
the very first time I tried, I think.
The first time I got really stoned was at the kitchen from a friend of mine.
It's always
First time his parents were away on a holiday.
Yeah,
I was sitting at 11 o'clock
Royale.
looking at the oven with the pizza in it. And that guy, like, a friend of mine, was also so stoned for the first time. It was
oh
like,
my God.
I want my pizza not too hot, but also not too cold. And that thing it
Just
was,
right.
yeah, that was
we had
super
we
nice.
were so high sometimes that we were on the phone ordering pizza, and we had to hang up and call back because everybody was laughing too hard, and the pizza place was like, "We're not delivering to you. Are you sure this is a real order?"
We don't trust this.
So my first drug weekend was really simple. I was 15. Was I 15? 15. And I had gone from Ottawa to Montreal with a high school friend of mine. My cousin was out of town for the weekend, and because I was such a mature 15-year-old, we were allowed to stay at her house. What they didn't know is that me and my gal pal had a plan, which involved dropping a hit of acid the first night and smoking a joint the second night. We didn't know what order we were going to do it in, but we had weed and acid, and that we were going to do drugs in Montreal. So actually, you know, acid was a gateway drug for weed.
Which
me.
I think is like
Which is-
super significant. Eh?
Yeah.
If you
For
hear
sure.
this
I mean,
as a Dutch listener,
sure.
to me it's funny. I was born in 71.
Well,
In
this
76, the policy changed. So I can always say I'm like a child of the tolerance policy. And there is the big divide here in the Netherlands. Still, I would say, although maybe it changed over the years, but such a big difference between cannabis on the one side and all the other illegal drugs, like including LSD, on the other side.
But the thing is, okay, so the year was 1984, I would imagine. I turned 50 last year, and we didn't have anything in Canada other than hash, mushrooms,
And LSD,
acid,
yeah.
and that was it. There were no fancy designer
Uh-huh.
drugs. This was, you know, this was kind of middle class Canada. There were no gangs. There was no.
But would you come into
divorce.
contact, for instance, with like speed or cocaine? That
No.
Okay.
No, I really didn't.
So
The first
psychedelics,
time,
basically,
So just those
weed,
psychedelics, and
yeah.
I think the first time that I tried anything other than cannabis, mushrooms, or LSD was in 1992 when I first came to Europe, and I was in London for the first 6 months. But that first week that I was there, I met these people that I'd met in Canada. Anyways, we went to a rave. And we'd never had ecstasy in Canada before. Somebody had,
and it was still the good times, I'd say, for raves.
Here's
For raves,
here's
yeah.
the thing, right? So I think it's very different when you try a drug at 14 or 15 than when you try a drug in your 20s. You know, notwithstanding the fact that your brain is still developing and whatever, but if I had tried ecstasy when I was a teenager, like most people in Holland that I've met did, yeah, I would have done it a lot more in my life, that's for sure. Because when I did it for the first time, I was like, uh-oh, I like this. Best not do it too often. And because I was 22 and had never been in like a rave scene or a music scene anywhere, it was really easy for me not to do it too often. So that means if you're doing a drug a couple of times a year, I know people that were, you know, they said, oh yeah, no, in the 90s, and then the whole weekend they would take 20 pills, you know. I don't think it's a problem. Can we talk about this? I'm sorry.
course, yeah.
This is all
of
open,
course.
whatever.
I would say that most people actually in the Netherlands would use ecstasy, for instance, in that fashion. Like for a big rave or a big party,
This
4
is
times
it.
a year.
Yeah, but not
you know?
in the UK, man. We
But in the UK, look at
yeah,
how
they
they
go-
do
I
alcohol,
know, I
anything.
know. It's
You
true.
know? It's a British thing. They overindulge.
We were, well, yeah, we were.
Hey,
the
it's-
Brits and
it's
the
because-
Americans are a lot alike.
It's because
How
of the
about that?
Brits that magical mushrooms got banned in the Netherlands. Eh? It's a true fact. You can look back on the
Listen, it's because
government
of a
debate.
stupid fucking
Accident.
tourist.
No, but
No,
always British.
Yeah, well, okay, but again, don't disparage. Don't listen. Don't be like that, mate. I've got all kinds of issues with the Brits. I love them, and Brexit
It's
is
true.
going to end
Yeah.
my company. So,
And they have a good.
So
you
a
know,
certain
trust
part
me,
of the
none
tourists.
Of them is,
Let's keep
no,
it at
no,
that.
there was some dickhead.
Yeah.
That did so. Anyways,
Caused a lot of damage.
but with the drugs, back to the drugs. Believe me, when I started smoking weed, when I started smoking cannabis regularly, I think I came in with a group of people that smoked regularly, and I was hanging out with them, so I was smoking all the time with them. This was like 19 or 20. But I had experimented a little bit. I'm not a big drinker. I never really liked drinking. I would have a few drinks, sure, but it's not something that, like, if somebody said pick between weed and booze for the rest of your life, that's easy. you know, that's super easy. Then bye-bye vodka. It's been nice knowing you.
I tried to get it underneath, you know, so that I can have both.
Look, at the end of the
I'll think
day,
of something.
I mean, for sure. I've never done a line of cocaine before. Can you imagine how annoying I would be? Coked out of my head. I would drive you nuts.
You don't need that. You got
Really? You don't think coke?
you got
speed?
too much
No.
energy
Yeah,
for
I
that.
know. And that was, you know, back to growing, like you said, growing up in Canada, I had way too much energy, and I never found a really good focus or outlet long term. So I would try something, I would get good at it, I would get bored with it, I'd move on to the next thing. My parents put me, we didn't have like money, but they sent me to schools, really good schools. So all the other students in the school were, you know, Europe, what's Europe? They were going to Europe 3 times a year for their Christmas holidays and to go skiing on spring break and whatever. And I grew up very lower middle class in that sense.
So to you, this interests me. If you would think of Europe back then, never having been there, would you think of, say, London or Paris or Amsterdam or Berlin or?
I didn't know any better than what I knew. I mean, I was I went to school in French most of the time. Basically, all my schooling was all French. So
Paris, basically.
well, it wasn't that. It was all the teachers and all the students were European, but they were from all kinds of different places in Europe. It was just, you know, the first few years of high school was that in Montreal, and I met a lot of people that, you know, they all had dual nationality. I had never been further than California on a plane. Do you know what I mean? A lot of their parents were running big companies. They ran embassies, and yeah. I learned very young that all the money in the world doesn't give you a brain or class or integrity. That I learned.
Or even simple manners.
Well, manners, sure. Manners maketh man, for sure. But I learned that really young. And it doesn't matter who you are. You get cut, you bleed red. So it doesn't matter what your background is, if you come from money or no money. Everybody makes a choice when they're over 18, over 21, if you want to put it like that. You make a choice of how you want to live. You know, and your background notwithstanding, you can choose to continue patterns. And I came from a good family. That's it. I came from a nice family, but by the time I was 17, I was done with school. I was like, I make more money working. Bullshit. And I was running clothing stores. I ran like 5 clothing stores. I was doing all the buying for them, all the bookkeeping, all the everything. And then I went to night school. I did Spanish and Italian at night school, just because
Comes in handy.
No, my parents got really pissed off. I didn't really finish high school. They didn't like that.
They always want the best for you.
Well, you know what? And the thing is, look, at the end of the day now, right, the schooling that I did, that base schooling, that everything in French, introducing Spanish, introducing Latin, putting me in schools where, you know, I was challenged, I suppose. And that was a really good for me to speak all the time, constantly, all the languages.
So how did Europe happen? Why and when did you go?
22, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm going. I want to go. My mother's father, so my grandfather was from Stockport in England. So I was a quarter northern, and I was able to I can't do it. I can't do it a lot. I was able to get through your paternal grandfather or something. They had a thing where you could get a work permit. So I had a work permit to work in the UK for 4 or 5 years, 5 years or something. And that was my first stop. I thought, yeah, I'll go. I'll get a job. That's that. And I worked at a pub for nearly 6 months. And while I was there, I came to Amsterdam to visit for the first time. I think I flew into, I can tell you when it was. It was February 2nd, 1992. I remember getting on the plane to Brussels. And I thought, after 2 days in Brussels, if the rest of Europe is like this, I'm going home. I did. And then I went to Bruges, and then it was okay.
Yep.
And then after Bruges, I went to London and was there for like 6 months. And then while I was in London, I came to Amsterdam for the first time, really early on. Like it would have been March 1992. I came and met friends, and that was that.
Do you remember which one was the first ever coffee shop you walked
Absolutely.
into? Yeah?
Oh yeah, no, I remember
Tell us
the
about
first
it.
joint. The first joint I smoked.
Let's go.
The first joint I smoked was in the Hotel Groenendaal on the Court in Nieuwendijk, because we got up there and they were like, "Oh," I was like, "Weed," and they're like, "We have some here." So the first bag of weed that I bought in Amsterdam was actually from a little hotel. Later on, I was running a little hotel, and I was selling weed in there as well, because off coffee shop, happens as well. There's an underground even when there's a legal
Overground.
market, and
Yep.
that's okay. I respect the underground as well. And then I believe the first coffee shop we went into after that was the Bluebird. No, not
Blue Lagoon.
Bulldog.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay.
In the red light district, the old one,
old
like
one.
the first one, the original one, and the Bluebird was like the second one. You know, I worked in a coffee shop. I worked in a shop called the Picasso at the top of that.
I remember
Do
the
you?
place.
I worked there for years. I also baked. So yeah,
This is a real
I
nice
know,
segue
it
into
is.
the
I
old
know.
box, eh?
It is. It's my old. We're doing my old books. I was going to say this. I'm like, okay, today we're skipping Derrick's old box because this old box has a really old box to it. No, I did. I was a dealer. We weren't bud tenders. We sold you drugs. We were dealers. Oh, yeah. And a big space
I just
cakes.
liked the sound of the word bud tenders.
I'm sure you
I
do,
like it
honey.
too.
Yeah.
Bartender.
I know, but again,
It's friendly.
Yeah.
it's so mainstream.
I'm not a drugs
though.
dealer.
I'm just well, okay. And again, you can look at it any way you want.
Yeah, I
I was a dealer.
Yeah, I
I think a dealer is badass, man. I want my street cred. A bud tender. Oh yes, well this particular terpene profile is fuck that. Do you want White Widow, Super Skunk, Northern Lights, or Orange Bud? Or do you want this hash or that hash? Wait, I gotta chase a cockroach around with the hash knife. That's what it was like, really. You know, I got told. Oh, even better. The owner. Oh, he was such a. This was not a nice guy. That aside. I got in trouble for being too nice to people. Where I come from, when a customer comes in, you're nice. Hi, how you doing? You know, blah, blah. Oh, you can't do that with Dutch people in
Takes
Amsterdam.
time.
Gewoon koffie regelen en die wiet geven en je hoeft niks meer te zeggen. Oh, is that seriously? Don't be so nice to people.
So that's where it goes wrong. We'll go back to this. We'll go back to this subject when we have Captain Hooter on.
Some of your dude. You
Go
know
for
what?
it.
I'm gonna smoke.
Go
some
for
of
the
that
pink
because,
lemonade haze.
because
It's totally nice.
it is.
Well.
No, but he
Mara is
complains.
rolling
He
a joint.
complains righteously so, I'd say, about how you get treated,
sometimes,
especially as a
sure.
tourist in the Amsterdam coffee shop.
And this is why
it's
I
terrible.
have to say I have
So
respect
it's
for
not-
shops like Boerenjongens that are taking their time to go in there and make it more of a positive experience for customers. You know, like some of the old style Amsterdam. I'm high now. See, this is what happens. I get high, and
it's
you
fine.
sure? Okay.
No. No problem.
I get into these. The coffee shop scene has changed now as well. I mean, I'm not going to pay 35 fucking euros a gram for Cali bloody weed that's not actually Cali. It was grown in Spain.
Yeah,
It's
but to
just a
me, and this
Cali
might be even a southern thing, but some basic hospitality. Come on,
Toch?
especially if the weed is so expensive.
Well,
you
that
know?
aside, you
it's
know,
it's not expensive to be friendly.
no.
Sort of.
It really
thing
isn't,
is-
and I think in any kind of horeca in situation, you know, and I like the coffee shop. It was a small little local brew shop, and it was cool. And
There are always good ones. of course.
well, some of them are, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
But it was great experience to be able to say, well, you know, back in the 90s, I also baked space cake. They were not edibles. There was a coffee grinder. There was weed. I would put the weed in the coffee grinder. I would make the cake batter. I would throw the weed into the cake, and then I'd put the cake in the oven or the muffins. And I think my first experience with getting super high from space cake was with one of the muffins kind of grew over the side. So, you know when a muffin gets big, it's like a big muffin top, yeah? I got a big muffin top. Anyways, I was like, oh, muffin. And then I ate a piece of it, and it wasn't a big piece. And I just remember like an hour later, I hadn't smoked, and I was really, really high. I thought, why am I so high? And then I was like, muffin? And then I thought, man, these tourists must be getting super fucked up. And now I use the edibles to sleep. I've never slept so well in my life. The last 2 years have been, I will say this, for the mostly the UK, the UK and the UK and Northern Ireland and whatever scene of edible makers. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for the best night's sleep ever. Okay. And you know what, that can seriously replace the only downside, I will say this, and this is my downside, because some of these edibles are really strong, and I get paranoid, and I don't mean a little bit paranoid. I get super fucked up paranoid if I take too much and I stay awake. If I fall asleep, I'm fine. But if I stay awake, I'm finished, and I'll sit on the bed and I'll be like, oh my God, everybody hates me and I'm going to have a heart attack, and really like crazy stuff. So that's one thing that I would warn people about. Just be a little bit careful with the with the dosage. But if you're looking for a great way to sleep, how did we get into, the muffins, right. Now, and yeah. See,
working at Picasso, you stole my from the archive segment.
I didn't steal from it. Listen, let me tell you something.
No, I love the stories.
It was
I love
a good
the
one, right? I was super old.
I didn't even know that you worked in a coffee shop.
I did.
So you're ex-colleagues, because of course Rens also worked in a coffee shop. But
he did, but he worked in a coffee shop mill, mate. That place was busy.
Super busy, yeah?
Super busy, super fancy.
But Picasso on Haarlemmerstraat, I think, in Amsterdam?
Yes, sir.
A lot of tourists must have been back then as well.
It wasn't back in
Crazy
the day. Let me
now.
tell you something about the Haarlemmerstraat back in the day. If you went down past the Prinsengracht, so like 200 meters up the road, it was dangerous. Where Barney's originally was... It was full of junkies. It was like the Zeedijk in the beginning of the millennium, like whatever. Yeah, and then it was sketchy. And I worked at a little hostel there. There was a whole bunch of other coffee shops. There was the Jets. There was, in the days before, the Greenhouse. Yeah, wait, that's up the road. We're not there yet. When the Greenhouse was not there before, there was a coffee shop called the Blue Velvet, I believe. Yep. Yeah, I remember that place. That was great fun. This smells really good, this pink lemonade, honey.
Pink lemonade.
It does. It smells really nice. But you just did not go further up the road there, so not everybody was coming down the Haarlemmerstraat. It's not like it was recommended. Now it's been voted de gezelligste winkelstraat in de hele Nederland.
It's true.
For the last however many years, because it is, you can't walk up the street
it's
anymore.
Gentrified
It's so
and super busy.
packed.
Yep.
Constant. I live around the corner from there. So, still. And... so it wasn't actually that crazy busy. And we were open super early in the morning. At 8 a.m, we had a deal where you could come in, and if you bought 25 guilders worth of weed, which is about 10 euros worth of weed at this point, you would get a free breakfast. So you would get a hard-boiled egg and some toast and ham and cheese and a coffee.
I think I actually did that once because
and
I love
I
breakfast.
probably made it for. It wasn't English. Yeah. It was Dutch. It was just bread and cheese and toast and peanut butter. Do we have peanut butter? I don't know. And it was, you know what? It's great that I can say that I did that I had the opportunity to do that in the heyday. This was in the 90s, man.
When everything was still growing instead of.
I wasn't joking about the strains. There were no options. There was White Widows, Super Skunk, Northern Lights.
Small menus.
There was,
the hash was more a variation.
I was going to say, however, what we did have was the beautiful Nepalese and the Afghani and the red Lebanon, that kind of stuff that, you young whippersnappers never got a chance. Now it's all the fancy hash coming up from Morocco. They're just like, it's all Skittles. Yep. And it's true. And lemon this. And for sure, spoiled.
Well, I have to say, back at the Tourmaline, they have the red Lebanon again.
Really?
Yeah, and it's really nice hash. But I never saw it in the back then. It was before my time. It's not
coming from Lebanon, though.
So I don't know if
must
it's
be.
the same.
There's always some production.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not
I got it from a French activist while in, I don't know, any country. And he said, do you want some red Lebanon? I couldn't believe it.
Wait. I was going to say, do you want to sprinkle? Wait, don't close that yet. Wait.
You have that grape
I think I brought some of it. Yeah,
to add on is fantastic.
Yeah. You gotta
extra charge, as Remo would say.
Here you go. Supercharge.
Man, I love that guy.
I was gonna say,
really,
you know
really
what? You want to talk about other people and other podcasts and other recordings and whatever. Remo and I work together. This going back to my. We'll get to your good old days on the next podcast.
Yes,
no one's as interesting.
No worries.
I know. With you, I'm watching it. I am. So Remo and I met in 2008 when I was working for Advanced Nutrients and he was working with Advanced Nutrients, or maybe also for. Their first encounter was in Vienna at Cultiva, which is a show that's been going on forever. And there was no weed to be found anywhere. Nobody had any weed. No one had any weed. And Remo's like, there's no weed. And I'm like, I will go on a mission and I will find us weed. Mm-hmm. And I swear to you, man, it took some doing. But I think
Vienna
I managed to
is super hard, always. Vienna.
Why?
To get weed there at the show.
Not anymore. You just let me know when you're coming. We'll get that all fixed up for you.
I remember.
Oh no, we were totally the plug there.
I
for
remember
a couple of
dry
years.
times.
Yeah, I
Dry
believe it. But
times.
there, it was like that as well, and certainly during setup day. But
Take your
man,
own
I
hash times.
went and scrounged and got Remo some weed, and from that moment forward, and in all kinds of time zones and wherever shows, we've been really good buddies, and it was such a pleasure to be able to bring him to the Homegrown Cup last year. For the really, like, I was like, you're here, you have to come, you can't not come. Like, so that was something that he needed to see. Really, I mean, okay, back to the advanced nutrients thing. That's a big American machine nutrient company, and that's where I learned a whole lot about growing, and that I know nothing about it. Really, I look at a plant and it can die. I can barely look after myself. I lost my fucking stuffed dinosaur on a golf course in England. Do you know what I mean? Like, I got him back. Come on. It's me. They mailed him back to me. Priority mail. I have a lot of experience with mailing packages back and forth between.
Yeah, because I can imagine some listeners are now still thinking, what's this bag lady thing? Does she live on the street?
If
What's
I
the
keep
bag?
going the way that I'm going, I might just wind up in your own under your bridge.
So tell us about the bags.
Okay,
Tell
so
us about
look, I'm
absinthe.
going to be. Oh yeah. Okay, so I've been working in the cannabis industry, and through Advanced Nutrients, I started going to all these expos. Like Spanibus this year is going to be my 12th time.
Nice.
That's people are like, oh my God, Spanibus, this is my second year, blah blah blah, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, the PTSD kicks in, right? And I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta pack the pallet. It is. There's so much prep work involved in this kind of thing.
Yep.
But through Advanced Nutrients, I got to know all kinds of people at all the shows. I'm really friendly. I mean, I don't see a rivalry between nutrient companies because, again, I can kill a plant with any plant fooding. There's
But
no
you're a
problem
social
there.
animal.
I am.
Yeah.
I really am. I do really like to meet people, and I do have a lot of fun. My dad was like that. He would, I do. And this industry is entertaining. Anyways,
Of course.
so after Advanced Nutrients, this is gonna segue nicely into my time in Eindhoven. Check this out.
Hell yeah.
Hell yes. I worked for Advanced Nutrients for 3 years, and then when I decided to leave, it was not going to be a good fit for me to stay. So I was like, okay, I said I'm going to take some time off, but you don't get to take time off when people know who you are and you haven't quite made yourself anyways. So somebody hit me up right away and was like, listen, Mara, we want you to come work for us. I'm like, mate, Eindhoven, you're out of your fucking mind. That's like 2 hours to get there. Doesn't matter. Come only a couple of times a week. Just
It's only
come to the
80
shows
minutes.
with us.
On
Not
train.
when you're on the... No.
I tell you.
Either way,
I do it
really,
often.
I did it. I'm sure you do when they work, right? And when they're not working, it takes a little longer. Anywho,
Just avoid the peak hours.
I came to work for a big wholesale company here
Okay.
in Eindhoven. Best has been around a long time.
Was it the Plantage?
It was originally the Plantage, and then it was taken over and became
Robin.
Future Care. I didn't know Robin. And then became Future Care, and then Future Care got bought by somebody from another big wholesaler that kind of, anyways. So oh, you gotta love them bikers, honey. That was a lot of fun. There was me and like 20 boys at the shows. It was very funny. But they were. It was a bunch of, they're trailer trash bikers. It was a motorcycle club, and they had this business that grew into, or I don't know, whatever it was. Anyway, so I was coming to Eindhoven a few times a week to work for them and going to all the shows. And because it was a wholesale, like before with Advanced Nutrients, you only get to meet the people that you know and know about nutrient companies. But with a big wholesaler, that's everything you supply to a grow shop to grow plants. So I had to learn way too much stuff that has no bearing on anything that I can do better or properly than anybody who is already doing it. But I got to meet a shit to all the suppliers, everybody. They would drag me to all the shows because that's where I'm lots of fun. Anywho, after I left them, and I stopped working there because it was two dead parents, one after the other, a year apart. And when my mom passed away, I had been planning on leaving anyways. I was going to go to Thailand. See, this all comes right round to everything. Yeah. And I stopped working there at the end of 2013. Yeah, I'm watching 2013. And then I took time off because, listen, when you have these type of emotional traumas, and then there was a broken foot as well, so there was too much. I took a couple of years off, and then when it was time to kind of, okay, I really should do something now, I went to Spanibus in 2015 with the intention of being like, okay, I'm going to see who's here, and I'm going to see who's going to hire me, and it's all going to be epic, and somebody will give me a job. But it was the first Spanibus in 12 years that I wasn't actually working. So guess what I did? Oh, I partied like a... That was it. I was like, fuck finding a job, man. I inherited some money. I'm not working. It was fun. Oh, it was loads of fun. And then after that, for 420, I was in America, in Denver, at the High Times Cannabis Cup with the Devil's Harvest Seeds. I was giving them a hand. And I stumbled on these bags, and I was like, what are these things? Because the people who were selling them knew me from shows in Europe, because sometimes I show up dressed as a giant frog. But that's a whole other story. The pictures are funny. You can post that. Anyways, these bags, and I like bags anyways. Before I even started, and I was like, wait a second. What now? Oh, yeah, they're smell proof. I'm like, can I just take, I'll be back. And I took one of the toiletry bags, and I went over to my buddy, grower, breeder, and I was like, smell proof. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I can't remember if it was, do they work or do they make them bigger? No. I'm not sure which of and I thought, well, do they work? They're here with this booth, with these people that I like and trust and whatever, so I'm guessing they work. And do they make them bigger? I don't know. Let me go back and find out. And they certainly did make them bigger. And, long story short, there's all kinds of new products, especially developing in this market through North America, through America. But I kept thinking bad things. I was like, smell proof. We don't have anything like this in Europe. Carbon lined. And then I just started thinking, two things entered my mind. Borders. I put that out of my mind very quickly because we don't want to think about bad things. And then I looked at the stuff they had there, and I'm like, oh, I could totally sell these at expos. Because when I go around an expo, and when a lot of the boys go around expos, a lot of people have a lot of money in their pockets. There's never anything to buy. Maybe seeds if you're a grower, right? But everybody else is just giving stuff away. And I was like, everybody in the industry needs this. It doesn't matter who the fuck you are. Yeah. Everybody produce. But I thought I had absolutely struck gold and hit the jackpot. And oh my God, I'm gonna be the next bag billionaire. No, it wasn't. I asked the guy there. I said, "Hey, can you sell these to me?" And he's like, "I don't think I have good enough prices to give you margins that'll make it worth it, but I'll put you in contact with the owner of the company." And they did. And I contacted them. And I guess, they made themselves look a lot bigger than they actually were. Because the Americans do that kind of thing. Love you, Ryan. Sorry, you'll never listen to this anyways. But that's what Americans do. And remember that if you're ever doing business with Americans, okay? They're not actually always as big as they want you to think they are. How about that? Is that fair?
And the term deep pockets can mean all sorts of things.
The term, you know what? Some of these people, seriously, oh yeah, there's people that's like, I'm managing a fund that blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
You full of shit. You're not managing anything. Anyways, the bags are awesome. The guy makes a really good, really, really good bag. And I was lucky enough to talk him. This is me and my blah, blah, blah. I was like, look, I'm nobody. I'm a small person. I said, but I will take your product and I will take this brand and I'll introduce it to the market my way. And in the last 5 years, I've just been...
Oh, yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah, no. I've been all over the place. Last year, I was on 48
you
fucking
are
flights.
Everywhere.
I am. And I have the best time and I have the best product and I get to meet the best people. I get to do the most fun things. I get to smoke the best weed. I get to hang with the coolest people. And I always find myself in these situations where I'm like, oh my God, how did I get here? And you guys are part of all that. Like, really, I consider it a privilege to be able to come here and sit in your office and do, this is epic. Thank you for getting me out of my office.
Yeah. It's an honor, really, for us. And it's all cannabis culture, really. That's what we, I think, all are all about. It's a great culture, you get to meet all kinds of people. The age thing, to me, has always been very interesting.
The what now?
The age thing. A lot of my friends, our smoking friends, are like over 80 that I've had in my life. Really old people. You can really call them old. But there's no barrier whatsoever, and it works the other way too. When
Cannabis breaks through all kinds of barriers.
Really?
A perfect example is Northern Ireland. You know, I've been there, and I got driven around, and I get super looked after. And you take
Actually,
a look
Cannabis News Network did a whole report on that specific aspect of Northern Ireland. Very interesting, Steven Compier. We can put it in the links because it's really nice item that he made about this.
Do you want to? Okay, here's what's happening now. All right, I told you this was going to happen. I warned you about this. I said we're going to get on.
We have all the time in the
we
world.
don't. We have. No, it says the activist to the woman who spends too much time staring at spreadsheets.
If it's good, it's good.
No, honey, it is. It's not good. It's awesome, but numbers
also,
don't
like
lie.
the question of the week, we're gonna move it over to the next episode. Because that's
No, because we give the book away every episode.
No, we're gonna give the bag away. Listen, did you get a question? Did you get any questions on
a grow
it?
question.
I got a good question. We're gonna do it right now because
fire.
we only
Let's
got
go.
like 10 minutes.
Let's go.
Okay, we got a question from Stijn, and he didn't mention his last name because
It better not be
anonymous. What do you think of the quantum boards hype?
I have no idea what that is.
I see them everywhere popping up, and I also bought one myself, but I still need to test them.
I'm going to put my hand up, and I'm going to assume that this is some kind of LED light.
Quantum boards, yes,
that's what it
it's
is.
LED lights.
Is that a question? Oh, shit, I moved
Yeah,
away
it's
from
a
the
question.
microphone. You know why I moved away? Because seriously, if I was going to grow, I would use LED lights. It's very simple because any idiot can work that. You just flip a switch on, and that's that. With other stuff, is dangerous. Now, is quantum better than... I'm sure there's a whole bunch of different light companies.
Totally. There's a world out there.
You need to do your research, honey.
Yeah.
But LED is a very easy... If you're what I will say is if you are a new grower... because I know all the things about growing. I'm rolling my eyes now. If you're a new grower, probably the smartest and the safest way to grow is to use LED lights.
Yeah, it's a bit more expensive, but it gives you a lot.
But you're going to be a lot more lazy because you have that. So.
I looked it up a little bit, and they got a lot of benefits of it. Also, one of them is the heat. Like with the normal HPS lights, you get a lot of heat, and that's the most problem you get when you are growing in the summer. So if you like to grow the whole year around, you should definitely go on LEDs. But those questions, I really like those. Talk about those.
You need to have
things.
You need to have growers on it. I was hoping somebody was going to ask like something. I don't know.
Super specific.
Something specific or fun or whatever. Take a look.
I got a typical question.
Did you?
For you?
How long do the bags work? Somebody already sent me that question. Am I?
No, but some guy who is called 365 joints a day. He's also one of the contenders of the Homegrown Cup 2 years ago.
Yes.
And he asked what did the lady do before all the bags? But
I was going to say I think I managed to put that
To
in
wrap it
there
all
pretty.
up.
I think I managed it all segues around nicely.
So I'd still say our listener Stijn, he'd still win the thing. And not only will he win the fantastic photo book by Steef Fleur, Humboldt GreenGold USA, but
when he grows his first crop, he will be able to stash his smell in a brand new Absent Green Pocket Protector. Brought to you by Absent and the Homegrown Cup and High Tea and the VOC and the Stone Society and the Bag Lady.
we're all in this together.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank Mara for being here.
Anytime. You guys, I have so much liefde for you. Really, that since Homegrown Cup, since years now, and that you've been to the Picasso just says that you're like an old crazy person like me as well.
And I also want to thank all the listeners for listening to this podcast again. And we will be there next episode again.
You will. And by the way, if you are looking for the Bag Lady, because I do need to do some kind of shameless plugs, you can follow me on Instagram at absent, ABSCENT.EU. I could do it in the other alphabet as well.
We're going to also put the links inside the description.
Of course you are, but it's...
And of course, follow us on Instagram too at
Highteapotcast. You got to follow this...
Highteapotcast on the Instagram.
Podcast on the Instagram.
Thank you
you're
for
so
listening.
Hip, Derrick. This is our...
See you next episode. Bye bye.
High Tea met Derrick en Rens wordt gemaakt door Derrick Bergman en Rens Hoppenbrouwers. Onze tune is Marijuana van Moon. Beluister de muziek via iTunes en Spotify. Volg High Tea op Instagram @Highteapotcast met een T. Ons mailadres is highteapotcast@gmail.com.